One of Iran's top diplomats is being sanctioned by the Trump administration. Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif is the latest Iranian official to be hit with U.S. sanctions. The move is seen as a major blow against efforts to hold diplomatic talks.
The Trump administration's decision to withdraw from the 2015 nuclear deal last year triggered a new wave of escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran, a deal the foreign minister helped broker.
CBS News State Department reporter Christina Ruffini is following the latest from Washington, and she joins us now. So, Ruffini, why sanction another country's foreign minister? Explain that to our audience.
Well, the administration says Zarif is more than a spokesperson for the Iranian regime. He's its chief propaganda minister, and as such is complicit in the regime's bad behavior. Enough is enough, according to the White House, and it was time to take action. But this was a controversial decision, especially inside the State Department, where there are concerns that designating a foreign diplomat could compromise possible future negotiations and lead to reciprocal measures against Americans, including possibly Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
So what do these sanctions actually do? I mean, we hear this word sort of being thrown around a lot in reference to Iran and other people that, you know, we're not necessarily in a great place with at this moment. But why is this significant?
Right. This administration is big on sanctions, Iran, Venezuela, and mostly it's the optics, right? It's part of the maximum pressure campaign against Iran. The Trump administration wants to make it as difficult as possible for Iran, and in this case, its foreign minister, to conduct business. And as part of these sanctions, anyone or any financial institution found to be helping Zarif could potentially be subject to sanctions as well.
All right, so the U.S. Treasury Secretary hinted at these sanctions weeks ago, and then there was a bit of a delay. Why was that?
Because it's such a big and unprecedented step to sanction another country's foreign minister. And the White House basically said as much yesterday. It wasn't taken lightly. The question is why it was taken at all. As late as last week, we were hearing this wasn't going to happen, that officials of the State Department had won the argument against taking action against Zarif. And then yesterday, rather unexpectedly, these sanctions were announced. One of the reasons could be these back-to-back interviews Zarif gave while he was in New York for the United Nations. He spoke to a lot of Western media outlets, and this seems to have really annoyed the administration, specifically Mike Pompeo, who criticized the media on Monday for, quote, giving Zarif a microphone to lie about what's happening in Iran. So yesterday, the U.S. sent its own message, no microphone required.
And how has Zarif reacted to that decision?
So Zarif and Iranian President Rouhani have said, at least publicly, that this shows the U.S. is afraid of him and his words. Zarif actually thanked the U.S. for considering him such a huge threat to the U.S. agenda, and President Rouhani said it shows Americans are afraid of Iran's foreign minister going on TV and doing interviews.
But, Christina, one thing that I think sometimes gets lost in all of this is the fact that there are other countries who are still, because of the Iran nuclear deal, still working to ensure that Iran does not get any nuclear weapons. And I wonder, how is Iran's outreach to those countries? In other words, will those allies of the U.S. be able to somehow bring President Trump to the table again where we become part of this nuclear deal, or is that completely dead in the water? In other words, it seems as if the Iranians are playing this game of chicken with the U.S. and others because they want the allies to somehow pressure the U.S. into getting us back into this deal.
Well, and this likely makes it harder, not easier, because if you're a designated person, it can complicate, the people you interact with can then become under sanctions. So the White House did say yesterday the president has no intention of punishing elected officials for interacting with or negotiating with Zarif, because really, as controversial as it was to sanction a foreign minister, going after other presidents and foreign leaders, especially Europeans who, as you mentioned, are still trying to hold together the tattered ends of this fraying nuclear agreement, would be basically untenable. Now, we'll have to see if Zarif's new status as a marked man makes him more or less powerful, both in his negotiations around the world and with hardliners back home in Iran.
Right, because essentially what you're saying is even though the U.S. has sanctioned him, the foreign minister can still deal with foreign ministers of our allies, and those foreign ministers of those other countries will not be under threat by the U.S.
That's what the White House said yesterday. It said it has no intention of going after those individuals.
Gotcha. All right, Christina Ruffini for us in D.C., thank you.
Thank you both so much.